Alright, so here is day 14 of going through my journal entries. So the quote for today is, "The one who follows the crowd will usually go no further than the crowd. Those who walk alone are likely to find themselves in places no one has ever been before." And the prompt is, do you feel pressured to go with the majority or crowd in certain situations? Give an example, or are you comfortable being a free thinker? So if you're following along, you can go ahead and pause right here and spend a few minutes responding to the question, and I'll be on here in a second to tell you what I wrote. All right, so let's see what I wrote. I said, as far as do you feel pressured to go with the crowd, I said, I like this quote, and I like to think of myself as a free thinker, but I'm not sure how true that really is. There have been times that I felt different, definitely different from most in my hometown, but have found that there are others out there who think like me. Maybe all of us with similar thoughts are the free thinkers of the world, separately coming to similar conclusions about the reality of things. Or maybe we're also being controlled in other ways to come to these conclusions. I try to be critical of almost everything I hear, but at the same time, it's impossible to know everything. So sometimes I may rely on others for information. But the fact that I've seen some of these others being biased by things like money makes me wonder if I can really trust anything I hear. The more I study my field, the less understanding I feel that I have about anything. In short, no, I don't follow the crowd, but I'm also not immune to periods of following based on available information. I don't really know what I'm saying there, to be honest. Let me just think about how I feel about the question. I think, so let's see. There's been times in the past, and I kind of go back and forth between like following people on like YouTube and social media. Like I have some political channels that I would follow, but then, because I think that's what I'm talking about, because, I would follow certain channels just to get access to information. But then, I wondered if, my thoughts and opinions on things were being biased by those channels, and I think one thing that makes me think of this in particular is that, a lot of these channels aren't like mainstream. It's people online that are talking about their opinions on different like political issues and things like that. And, they will talk about, well, the mainstream news says this, but they're not, they're not looking at it from this perspective, or they're not talking about this or that. And I just, whenever they say that, whenever people are like, we're not the mainstream media, like I definitely do not trust mainstream news, like by any means, like especially the money behind it and, all that stuff. But there is a monetary gain to be made by these people on YouTube as well. You can't negate that. Like, they're going to report on things that's going to get them followers and subscribers. And so I don't fully trust that either. And especially when they start trying to differentiate themselves. Like, we're not the mainstream and we need your support and blah, blah, blah. Like, I get it. Like, yes, they do. But I'm kind of getting off on a tangent. But I just remember my grandparents, like probably a lot of people's grandparents and maybe parents now, they just like obsessively watched Fox News for like the last 10, 15 years of their life. And I thought that they knew that like the news was like biased, you know, towards right wing. But I just remember one time my grandpa made this comment. Like, he's a very smart man, like, not educatedly smart, but he was not stupid. And he like made some comment about Fox News and how it's like they report on things that nobody else reports on. You know, nobody else is reporting on this. And then I was like, why did he say that? You know, why? Like, maybe they do, but it's kind of like some of the stuff they're reporting on is ridiculous. But then I realized, you know, because I would be over there and I ended up watching it because, you know, I'm there with them. They're telling their people that are watching that they're like, you won't hear it anywhere else. We're the only ones talking about it. The liberals don't want to talk about this and blah, blah, blah. And so seeing that with his news and then seeing that with some of the news that I was watching, like, it automatically like made me be like, is this true? Do I really have these opinions on things, or is it just that I'm consuming media that has these opinions that's only giving me one side of the story, you know? And so I am cautious of that. Like, I try to be cautious of that. And there was even like this source that I was watching quite a bit for a couple of years, and then I noticed they were starting to talk a little bit differently and focus on certain things and saying things that I didn't agree with. So I think I am critical, like, even of the people that I somewhat trust, or like, you know, I tend to like their opinions on things. Like, I'm not just one that's just going to go with whatever they say because I fully trust them. I definitely do not think. And one thing, you know, people talk bad about social media and how people get in these like bubbles and they get radicalized and things like that. But for me, it's been like the opposite. For me, it's been more like a freedom of seeing other people. Like, I don't feel like I'm normal. Like, I've never felt like I wanted to live like the stereotypical life. I've talked in some other videos saying like I've never like felt like I wanted to get married. You know, some people are saying like, oh, well, women these days are just getting radicalized, like feminist or whatever, and they're not wanting to get married and they're not wanting to have kids. But like, that's something legitimately that I've felt like my whole life. I've never like dreamed of having a wedding or having kids or any of that stuff. Like, I never imagined it for myself. Like, I just assumed it would happen, but I never imagined it for myself. But it makes me feel better now that like other women are coming out and saying this. And the same thing with like, I've never wanted to have a big house. I've never, you know, that just wasn't something, you know. And so like when people started talking about the tiny home stuff, I was like, yes, like, I don't want a big house. I don't want a lot of things to take care of. And so, you know, even though I'm jumping on like some of these movements that like other people are doing, I don't feel like I'm like jumping on because it's a popular thing. Like, it's more like I'm finding these things that I'm like, yes, this is like what I've already been thinking, and this seems to align with that. So, yeah, I'm in line with the people who are in favor of like being child free. I don't think everyone should do, like, if that's just something that you feel, I don't think you should feel pressured to have children. I don't think you should feel pressured to get married. I don't think having like a big house and fancy car, that's just not something that I value. And so it makes me feel a lot better being able to get on YouTube or on Instagram or other types of social media where other people have these same views. And, you know, so I don't know. I don't feel like I'm following a crowd, but I feel like for anything that you're interested in, there is like some sort of crowd that's involved with it that you can align with. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is like, yeah, like, even though you don't follow the crowd, like, it's no one, I don't think, is just completely like their own individual who's just like completely different from everybody else. You know, there may be a few random examples, but you're gonna fall into some crowd, but I think it's whether or not you align with a crowd that you already align with versus like seeing a crowd and wanting to be a part of that crowd and following into that crowd because you see them and you want to do it, I guess, if that makes sense. I don't know. But that was what I put, what I think about that. So, yeah, what do you think? I'll be back tomorrow with day 15.